Even though they're not saying it publicly, Japanese automakers are absolutely freaking out. An 11 billion tariff tsunami is about to hit them. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. Japan's trade-reliant car makers are bracing for a profit pummeling of at least $11 billion. This is from the US alone, not even including China, and possibly substantially more, says Automotive News, over the coming year, as the Trump administration's war on imports unleashes a tsunami of tariff turmoil on the world's #2 auto exporting nation. Now, it's #2 behind China, but the numbers are very close. Much of that pain could be America's gain, as Japan's manufacturers look to dial up US output. But that's going to take time, and that's why it's going to cost them a huge amount of money. The tariff impact came into sober focus recently, if only in general terms, over the last 2 weeks, as Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Mazda, Subaru, and Mitsubishi announced weakening financial results. And in fact, in some cases, they wouldn't even announce any results for the rest of the year. Any outlooks, they're like, well, we don't even know what's going to happen. We don't know how much money we're going to lose. Amid teeth-clenching uncertainty about future trade policy as trade negotiations continue, only Toyota and Mitsubishi issued full earnings forecasts for the current fiscal year ending March 31, 2026. The others withheld guidance or gave only piecemeal outlooks. Japanese automakers are very dependent upon selling cars made outside of America to Americans living in America. For example, 1 million Toyotas sold last year in the United States were made outside of the US. Nearly across the board, Japanese automakers put on a brave face about mitigating the looming tariff broadside. But the truth is, they are, well, panicking. Strategies include production footprints to eke more product from US-based factories so their vehicles can duck the Trump administration's 25% duty. Other countermeasures include urgent belt tightening and possibly price increases. Subaru, which imports half the vehicles it sells in America, said it could ramp up output at its sole US factory as high as 500,000 vehicles if it had to. But that would require a substantial expansion of the local supplier network, which will take quite a long time. The factory churned out only 345,000 vehicles in the just ended fiscal year. Honda said it would increase CR-V production for the US market at factories in the United States and also shift Civic hybrid production from Japan to a plant in Indiana. But that wouldn't happen until later in the year at best. It is looking at other adjustments, though, to its production footprint and cost structure. Mazda is also in a bind. It gets about 55% of its US sales from Japan and has only one plant in the United States, which is tooled to make only one nameplate, the CX-50 crossover. In other words, there's nothing Mazda can do. They're screwed. 55% of its sales, right, US sales, come from Japan. Mazda's Alabama plant, jointly operated with Toyota, has limited space for more production. It can't produce more cars. It manufactured 113,000 vehicles in the last fiscal year out of its capacity for 150,000. But the truth is, like I said, it's only tooled for one car. And that means it's of zero use to Mazda trying to actually mitigate its tariff issues. To get more US-made product for the US, Mazda has stopped shipments of the CX-50 to Canada. The move also helps avoid a retaliatory tariff Canada has put on US-made vehicles. This is very complex. Mitsubishi is uniquely exposed. It is the only Japanese car maker without a US production base. It seeks to alleviate that by leaning on partner Nissan for cars. It's going to rebadge Nissans. Great strategy. Including a rebadged version of the next generation Nissan Leaf electric vehicle, which hasn't even arrived yet. Among other ideas, executives have put out there in the ether, was a joint production of a new SUV through a Mitsubishi investment in one of Nissan's US plants. But that's a long way away. So how will Toyota and Nissan deal with these tariffs? The capacity utilization rate at Nissan's US plants is among the lowest in the industry, which is a huge problem. I mean, Here's the thing though, Nissan are closing 7 of their 17 factories worldwide. Its US factories are using only 57% of their overall capacity, according to Auto Forecast Solutions, which is way below what they need to be doing. To better leverage that capacity, Nissan has said it is in talks not only with Mitsubishi, but also Honda. Those companies may be able to source extra US-made output from Nissan's underused lines. In other words, Honda and Mitsubishi are just like, Nissan, can we rebadge some of your cars? Americans won't know. We'll just pretend they're Hondas and they're Mitsubishis, even though they're Nissans. I don't think that strategy is going to work very well. Toyota is betting on higher output in the US thanks to the restoration of production at its Indiana plant. Work there was suspended last year amid costly recalls to address quality issues with some of its popular utility vehicles. Toyota is also toying with the idea of price increases. They've mentioned price increases many times. In fact, they're saying they're going to pass on the cost of the tariffs straight to US customers, and US customers are just going to eat it up. They're going to say, yeah, no problem, Toyota. We're going to pay an extra 20%. Okay. Tighter inventories and better supply of hybrids give Toyota pricing flexibility, say executives. But, as I mentioned before, 1 million cars being made outside of America can't be replaced overnight. Toyota only offered a tariff breakdown for April and May, the first 2 months of its fiscal year. But the tally for just those 2 months, and it wasn't even for an entirety of 2 months, it was less than 2 months, was $1.2 billion in cost. Less than 2 months cost them $1.2 billion. Toyota wants to contain those costs, obviously, but extrapolates, well, if you extrapolate that sum to a year, the grand total will cost Toyota $7 billion. For a company with more than $200 billion of debt, that's an issue. By volume, Toyota is the biggest exporter to the US from Japan, shipping 540,000 vehicles from Japan to the US for about 23% of its US sales. As recently as 2019, Toyota exported 750,000 from Japan to America a year. Japan's auto industry is the backbone, says Automotive News, of its national economy, employing 5.5 million people directly, and indirectly, probably another 50 million. Automotive products account for about 30% of Japan's exports to the US. But the country's motor vehicle shipments to the US have gradually declined as its car makers localize in North America. In 2006, Japan exported 2.3 million vehicles to the US. In 2023, the number was 1.5 million. In negotiating tariffs with Washington, Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba says any trade deal has to alleviate the tariffs targeting the country's critical auto industry. And that's the position that probably Trump wants Japan in a position where they have to negotiate. For automakers here, though, a breakthrough, can't come soon enough. And will there be a breakthrough? Well, no one knows. The total announced tariff impact so far is $11.5 billion on Japanese automakers. Here's a breakdown from Automotive News. Toyota Motor Corporation, tariffs cost the automaker $1.2 billion in April and May, driving a 21% drop in operating profit this fiscal year. And obviously that 21% drop in profit was only from 1 month. That's 1 month. It only went until the end of April, that actual reporting period. So a 21% drop in operating profit came as a result of a single month from 12 months of business. It's going to cost them $7 billion this year. Honda calculates tariff costs of $4.3 billion for the full fiscal year, including motorcycles, power products, and automotive businesses. Some $3.5 billion of that is pegged solely for automotive industry and automotive components. Honda forecasts operating profit to crater 60% in the current fiscal year after being broadsided by US tariffs, and will suspend large-scale investments in electric vehicle manufacturing in Canada. They were meant to invest $11 billion. They've cancelled that. Nissan expects tariffs to cost $3 billion this current fiscal year, but it thinks it can mitigate about 30% of the cost in the April-June quarter. Don't know how. Nissan withheld earnings guidance, but said it expects global sales to contract 2.9% to 3.25 million vehicles, which is a flat-out lie. There's no way in hell Nissan really believes its sales are going to contract by only around 350,000 this year. Anyway, if you're a fan of Nissan, you've obviously unsubscribed or stopped watching by this point. Mazda didn't give a full-year tariff estimate or earnings outlook, but in April alone, the company put tariffs Costs are between 60 to 66.8 million, which sounds very small. I don't understand how that can be possible considering most of Mazda's cars are imported. Mazda wants to offset an anticipated US decline with high deliveries to other markets like China. Good luck with that. Subaru. Executives said tariffs could cost Subaru Corporation $2.5 billion in the current fiscal year, and that's going to be devastating for a relatively small company. Mitsubishi. Looking at the current fiscal year ending March 31, 2026, Mitsubishi predicted tariffs would cost $267 million only. I think that's pretty unlikely. We'll see though. As you can see, the effects of tariffs on the Japanese automotive industry will probably end up costing them if things happen as they appear to be happening for the rest of the year. Most likely the cost will be around 15 billion US dollars. It will be enormous, be devastating to Japan's economy and Japan's automotive industry. But this is going to happen. It's going to be a perfect storm. It's going to be an absolute tsunami because this is happening at the same time that Japan's market share in Southeast Asia for car sales and China is shrinking to the point of, you could even say, collapsing. This is going to be a terrible year for Japan. And I know I've predicted this a few times, and I probably sound like I'm being a bit repetitive, but it's only going to get much, much worse.